Okay, I'm back at it. Different day. Anyway, I've had a multitude of problems getting the right parts to assemble this engine. So just went to put the oil pan on, and once again, the new pan is a little deeper than the one that we had on it. So I'm probably gonna have to back up and order a little bit longer pickup tube for the oil pump. I'm getting ready to set up this other cylinder head and drop a lifter in and check push rod length. And once again, I'm gonna use my old friend Play-Doh. I'm gonna put some Play-Doh on top of this piston, and then I'm gonna set the head on it. Zero lash set my valve train, roll the engine over 3 or 4 times, and then we'll pull it off, and then we'll look and see how much clearance we have, piston to valve clearance. Like I said in earlier recordings, I don't have an issue. I don't see any issue with this camshaft and a flat top piston. I run it in another engine, but I'm gonna check it to be on the safe side. So anyway, here we go. Well, since I have to wait for the correct oil pan to show up, might as well walk you through a little bit of the stuff that I'm gonna do to this set of heads. These are AFR heads. I think they are a 210cc runner. Very good set of bolt-on heads, but I always like to check specs, especially on spring install heights and how much seat pressure you have once you get these things installed. And hopefully you can see this, but I've got a tool. It's a micrometer that's used that we'll be able to put on here. And I can adjust this thing out and we'll be able to see what the install height is on this set of springs. I might even be able to look on the spec sheet, but that's cheating. So we got this installed, and I know the comp cams, the springs for that cam that we're running in this 383, they call for a 1.75 install height for the springs that comp cam recommends for this. And these are installed at about 1.8. So I could probably check 3 or 4 more, but given the fact that these are factory heads, I'm gonna assume that those are pretty good. So anyway, the next step would be to see what this tension is on these springs at that height. And in this case, I'm gonna try to use this brand new tool that I got. I have here behind me, flip this camera around, I'll show you, but I do have an old faithful. These things, this thing's probably almost as old as I am. I got it from a machinist that was here local. I picked this up from him years ago, and basically the only reason why he sold it to me was because the spring gauge only goes up to 250 pounds, and a lot of your new roller cams, you know, you have to have a shitload more, you have to have a lot more gauge because they're well up into the 300 range, 300 and 400 pounds. So anyway, let me see if I can get set up, and we'll see if I can get this camera set up here and maybe get a little bit of an idea what we're gonna do on this. I haven't used this yet, so this will be kind of a new trial. But what I'm gonna try to do is just get it as close as I can with this, and I'm gonna set my dial indicator, or my caliper, excuse me, at 1.8, and I'm gonna lock that. And then we're gonna turn this on, and we're gonna put it in the vise. I really think I can come up with a better way to measure this other than just the rudeness of how I'm going to, but we're gonna use we're gonna dial this dude in, and I'm just gonna go off the face of this vise. I just wanna get something that's somewhat close, and I'm gonna dial this in till I get a little bit of resistance there, and that's pretty close. Yep, that's really close. So that's about 148 pounds of seat pressure, and off the top of my head, I think that's pretty close for these. These may be somewhere in between 100 and, I don't know, this cam maybe 135 to 150 at that install height. And you can kind of play around with that install height too. If you have a set of springs that are a little bit strong, you can always make that install height higher or shorter. But the other thing you have to be, if you make them shorter, of course, is you have to watch out for spring bind. So I'm gonna do some looking on this and see, but I'm pretty sure I have the seat pressures written down for my cam somewhere. So if that's the case, then I'll probably go ahead and install this. One of the other things that I have done as well on this head, and I do this especially whenever I'm putting one together for the first time, is I usually install these checker springs. And I do that for a few reasons. One is whenever I get ready to put the engine together, when I can loosely bolt the head on. And with that head loosely bolted on, I can put a push rod on the lifter and kind of do a zero lash adjustment on the rocker arm. And I can roll that engine over and ensure that I don't have anything that's going to hit the piston, like the valve and the piston aren't going to be hitting each other. That's always a good indication. Another thing is it helps me too, where I can get my push rod length set up and I can just use my checker rod. So once I get that all done and I get my push rod lengths figured out and everything, then I'll end up installing the springs back on. And this is a roller cam too, so I don't think they sometimes they'll tell you to pull this inner spring out, but I think with the roller cam you're probably in pretty good shape. I know the heads that I put on my blue car that have this same cam, pretty much right out of the box blueprint engine heads, and I didn't have any problems with those. So anyway, I'm gonna do a few more things, and then maybe I can bolt one of these cylinder heads on while I'm waiting on an oil pan. I want to go over one more thing before I start actually just finishing this engine out, but I want to show you how to correctly size for push rods. And if you'll notice, the other day I went ahead and put some checker springs on, and now that I've got these checker springs on, it makes it a little bit easier to use these push rod checkers. And this one is adjustable, but unfortunately with the guide plates installed, it's almost a little bit hard to get it to slide in past the guide plate. So I can leave this nut here, I can leave it on there, and then basically all I'm going to do is turn this off, and we're going to assemble this through here, and I'm going to screw this back in down here at the bottom. And I checked these the other day, so I know what the length are, what they're going to end up being. But I'll put this in here, and typically what you can do is, what I like to do is I will adjust the length of this until the ball is kind of centered within the stem. And once I get that close, the next thing I'll do is get me a Sharpie, and I'll raise this up, and then I'll take me a Sharpie and I'll color the very top of the valve stem. And then once I'm there, I'm going to just do a zero lash. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do a preload or anything. You're just wanting a zero lash. Do a preload if you want, but it's on this one I can just do a quarter I can do a quarter or a half, somewhere in that neighborhood. Just get yourself a little bit of preload. And then the next thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna roll the engine over. And let me find my ratchet. We're gonna roll the engine over 2 or 3 times, and we're gonna see how that valve turns out. Essentially, it's gonna leave a mark on that, in that Sharpie, on the center of the valve. And once you get that, then we can take this push rod out and actually get a pretty good measurement on it. All right, so there's a couple, 2 or 3 times. We'll come back over here and take this off. Pull that out of the way, and let's see if we can get this to 0 in. You can see where my pattern's at from the marker, just pretty much in the center. So I'm happy with that. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unscrew this. And you can do this with the guide plates out so you don't have to take this apart, but this is gonna give me a very close adjustment, a very good close to where I can get a push rod within a few thousandths. But once I'm there, then I'm gonna take my big, tall, long caliper here, and I'm just gonna measure this. And then this will give me, on these, I'm about 7 inches and 150 thousandths. And I think the push rods that I got were 7.2s. So, but anyway, that's a really kind of that's how I use to check for my push rod length. Anyway, I think now I'm going to finish assembling this thing and hopefully get it on the run stand. So, okay, I almost forgot the Play-Doh that I put on the piston the other day, and you can kind of see, where the markings are at, where the valve's going to clearance. I don't have an issue where the valve reliefs are at in the piston, but you can see it's a pretty thick. And I'm going to cut this in half on each valve area and remove it. We'll take half of this off. Try not to disturb it. But this will give you a really good idea. And I'll zoom in on that in just a second. But this will give you a very good idea of the clearance. And, you know, typically you want 60 to 100 thousandths. And I can tell you pretty much by the eyeball that we have plenty of clearance between the valve and the piston. Okay, I've got this thing finally assembled. Just a few little minor things to do to it, get it set up. Next step is we're going to put it on my run stand. But first, I got to remove the engine that's on that stand. Which is the engine out of my Nova. So I'll pull this one off and I'll hang that one on the stand, get it all buttoned up and ready to bust off. And we'll see how it goes on the first startup. So wish me luck.